a really quick picture of what a capper unit is, because this is actually fairly important for some of the hospitals.
Could you also kind of briefly touch into exactly why this is needed? Because you had like one slide talking about the whole versus the non-whole one, but you went through it super fast.
Sorry. In terms of the face shield design, correct?
Yeah. About why we actually need a cap.
So that's just meaning from the top. We want to prevent airflow or have a barrier for particulates so that it doesn't approach in from the top, because as healthcare workers lean forward, it is a possible exposure. The reason why we want so much coverage with these face shields is because we're not planning on issuing goggles with that. And if the face shield covers the top and the sides, we won't need to issue goggles for every person. That increases the comfort of the people working, and also make sure that logistically speaking, we don't have another set of equipment that we need to then sterilize and distribute. It's one of the major problems of a lot of the initial early versions of the shields that are out. They don't cover enough on the sides. If they don't cover enough on the sides, then they're not usable by themselves. They have to have additional equipment underneath. The entire idea of the shield is a first layer protection from particulates being spewed out by infectious patients. And so hopefully the more enclosed methods will prevent the need for more PPE. Let me show you really quickly. I'm going to share the screen. So this is a PAPR unit that is currently it's called the capper unit. It's made by Maxair, and it has a disposable face shield, as you see here. What this shield is basically a piece of plastic with a much thinner piece of plastic that hooks underneath one's chin when worn. Now, positive pressure, this filtered air pressure units, what they do is essentially force air into an area to make sure that all the air in that is filtered, and it's basically an open system. What we've done with Tucker over at the U of E and Young Academy is we've created shields that are more in line with the old style units. As such, that wrap all the way around, and as a workaround, we've actually done a test using tried and true painter's tape, and that is a garbage bag essentially, and it's worked. One of the things that, just to show you the kind of MacGyvering that we're trying to do right now to keep equipment running. So we're printing this with Tucker right now over at the U of E, and we have 13 of these units in Keck and another 11 at Verdugo Hills. So we're trying to print 2 face shields for each of these, one that can be sanitized and being prepped while the other one's being in use. The idea here is that all the tape, all the plastic on the bottom gets torn off and thrown away at the end of each procedure, and we retape and redo this. Now, this is all because this is a disposable unit, and we worry we're going to run out of those disposable face shields. This is one of those essential units that basically, if you're wearing this, you don't need to wear all the other equipment, thereby we can save it. And it's actually more efficient to use and more protective than just wearing an N95 mask. So that's my little show and tell for that portion. And I'd be happy to answer any questions right now.
Daryl, if it's helpful, I have a photo of one prototype on the actual helmet that Zach is wearing.
Oh, yes.
Let me just take over the screen for 1 sec.
Sure.
So if everyone can see, here's the PAPR helmet with our laser cut shield. This is like version 2 out of 5 now. If you follow my cursor, Daryl's talking about adding blue tape around this edge with plastic sheeting to form a gasket around the neck. So, and we're closing it at the back with a metal snap.
Now, what's important to note is that this is actually going to be reusable as opposed to the disposable ones that aren't reusable. This is sanitizable in terms of wiping down. It's just going to be a sheet of PETG. And all of our disposables are readily sourced and is not in short supply. It's not the ideal solution, but it is something that will keep these units up and running. It doesn't have to be an airtight seal on the bottom. The more important part is the front shield and basically trapping or preventing anything from backflowing up underneath. Venting out in the back is perfectly fine. The units generate enough pressure. And so that's actually how these units work. So we're just mimicking how the original setup is doing. We're just trying to alleviate that possibility of not having these units because of disposable portions are no longer available.
So Jill has a question, but I'm not sure if she asked her question already. Okay.
So so I asked my question. So we use, so in the BSL3 lab, we use the exact same Capper 710 DLC system, that helmet system. Although obviously with what the work that we're doing, we have the shroud attachment on the lens. And I didn't know, has that been looked into to see if there's the option of doing some sort of modified shroud attachment to the lens? Because I guess I'm thinking, if the lens is reusable, if we had almost, I hate to say, a disposable shroud with the reusable lens, that might be an option?
Right, that's essentially what we've done with this. The shrouding portion that we're using blue tape and a plastic to create a shroud on the bottom. We're also in short supply of the zipper style shrouds that they had with they essentially adhesive a zipper down the entire length of the plastic, and so you could zip up a secondary shroud. So instead of using complicated glues and gluing on material that then would have to be tested for cleaning aspects, we figured that if we can solve this with plastic and a little bit of painter's tape, this would be a replicable model. And we tested it out with the respiratory team, and everything seemed to work for them. They were happy with it.
And I'm sorry, so just to clarify, when you're talking about a shroud versus the undercuff, so is it that you're saying that you took the plastic piece for the undercuff, or did you just forego the undercuff and have a shroud that came down that actually covered the chest?
Oh, I'm sorry. So for the respiratory therapists, they have a different model of an older model that what they call a shroud is basically just a all-enclosing of the neck area, and it loops up over the ears. I'm not familiar with the exact model that you're using on your items.
It's actually the same model. I think we're just using different terminology because, again, like research in clinic, right?
Right.
We all use the same things, but we call them different stuff. Right. So in the research community, what we call a shroud is something that comes down, and it would actually need to come, let's say, breast length. Okay. Because we're working inside of a cabinet, and so the cabinet has about this much space that opens for our arms, but then that leaves that part of our chest and exposed.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but if I'm hearing correctly, it is maybe possible to, and I hate to say, use the garbage bag method and actually just extend it down to, let's say, breast or chest length, and do again just like a duct tape to the mask.
Talking to the respiratory therapists, they actually prefer the method of having it just at the face. Sure. They won't need that. They'll also be gowned up already, and having that go any further will complicate the gowns that they're already wearing. I'm
talking about a different utilization within the research environment.
Okay. Yeah. No,
our research environment, we require the additional protection. So I'm just thinking of ways with the same system, because we're having the same PPE shortage of the lens with the shroud.
Oh, okay.
So I'm thinking how we could actually take this idea and not only use it for the hospital setting, but actually be able to use it in the research setting as well.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So for all the BSL-3 labs across the nation,
How many units do you have over there?
So we currently have 2. We had actually donated 4 of them to the clinic.
Okay.
And then we're ordering an additional 4, which should be here in the next month or 2.
Okay. So, Tucker, we'll keep that in the numbers. So if we need to make this visor for you, we'll keep that in the in our numbers to make sure that we have enough. Because right now, like I said, we have 11 over at Verdugo and 13 right now over at Keck. And I've been reaching out to other hospitals through my connections and talking to them. And I've heard that Kaiser is not prepared for this. And the only reason I know this is because my little brother's an anesthesiologist over at Downey. They maintain their own PAPR equipment for anesthesiology. And they are also slowly running out of supplies, but they aren't sourcing out into the community for solutions. This potentially might be something that will be a shortage across LA, and that this might fulfill that entire need of being able to keep those units running.
Right. I wanted to actually mention that. So I realized that this meeting is about USC. And we gave USC 23 UVC disinfection boxes, but we also gave 5 to CHLA. We gave 5 to CH Orange County, so Children's Hospital Orange County. We gave 10 to Huntington Hospital. We gave 10 to various private practices around LA, like internal medicine private practices. So we've given about 80 of them away to various hospitals, because we also gave about 15, I think, to UCLA. So when it's like 6,000 to USC, it's not just USC, right? Like it's lots of hospitals. So you shouldn't, we don't just need to think about USC, because.
And I will say that, so as far as biosafety level 3 research labs in the area, so it's basically UCLA, USC, and UC Irvine, at least in the Southern California area, are the only 3 research labs that can actually do the SARS-CoV-2 research. And so we all have similar systems, and we're all having the similar issue. So I'm trying to at least promote the mindfulness that while the clinic surge is important, there's another battlefront. And I would say that our needs are probably much smaller. And so if it is possible, even just a couple, not just for us, but I mean, as you said, I'm in constant contact with my colleagues at these other labs as well, in an effort to maybe just share information, and maybe they have resources to help us as well.
Right. So the USC clean room gave all of its gowning, right, which is, toe to tip of your head gowning to Keck. And I don't know where that went. But that would also be very similar to BSL-3 gowning. But I know it went there because I was in charge of that. I don't know where. I put it on a truck and then it left.
Who requisitioned it and where that were in?
I couldn't. You were breaking up, Sean.
Yes. Do you know how that was requisitioned when you put it on the truck, or what department you sent it over to?
The infection prevention office. I know who it went to, but I don't know where in the hospital it ended up. But it was a big effort of sending a large quantity of PPE from the main campus over to the health science campus. So the School of Engineering sent all of the clean room PPE from our research and teaching clean rooms. So I'm really sorry, Jill. We have no more clean room PPE.
I saw the photo of you guys loading that truck. I saw that.
So we sent all of our clean room PPE. We also sent all of our chemical engineering teaching lab PPE. So all of that's gone. So we don't have any more like large research facility lab PPE I could somehow scrounge up and send to you.
And I think you bring up a good point that it seemed like there were efforts kind of put out in, I would say, rather narrow channels. And so, yeah, I mean, as far as PPE, you know, you kind of like heard a call, sent it. I mean, we did the same thing with our cappers. But then only now, I think, is it actually, I'm so happy for this workshop so that people could actually see and have the communication globally at USC to try and fill more needs and just, I guess, be more efficient in how these things are kind of getting out and where they're going.
Yeah.
Tucker, you had a comment that you wanted to say, I saw?
Oh, I was just going to say the Papper shields that Daryl and I have been working on cost about $2 each to make. They're super cheap and you don't need a lot of them. So we're happy to share our design, and as long as we have material, produce them. I don't know who needs them. So if Daryl and Jill, you all can coordinate who could use these, we can get them out.
Jill, if you can send me numbers in terms of units for your colleagues that need replacements. The way that we've been talking about it is basically we're trying to make 2 per unit, so that it can be in constant use while one person's using it. The second replacement shield can be wiped down and reconditioned for the next use kind of situation. Obviously, that's for the clinical setting. For the research setting, you might have more time in between.
Yeah, and I would say, so we're actually setting up a Zoom meeting with our biosafety team. So I'm so glad to have this information to at least present to them to see what, if any, I mean, they may just outright say, no, we can't do this. I would hope that they'd be a bit more flexible. But I will definitely, I sent you my email and we can communicate offline should they see this as a viable option for us. Thank you all.
So just to answer Grant, so I just reposted, oops, I reposted just to Nick. So sorry. So I just reposted the sign up sheet. If you're interested in just kind of joining and helping print. And as far as if you have ideas on solutions for any PPE devices, I think Daryl is working on creating kind of a central repository. If it's a 3D printed solution, I've put this in a chat before. I would really encourage everybody to look at the NIH 3D print exchange. It is a fabulous repository where there are a ton of ideas that are already developed, and NIH is going through and looking at them. And more importantly, there's also ideas that have already been like rejected, right? And you can learn a lot from seeing ideas that haven't passed, because they actually explain why they haven't passed. But it's if you Google NIH 3D print exchange, it's like the first thing. If it's not a 3D printed idea, then there isn't as good of a exchange site. But the American makes.us site that I'll put it up here again, that SK suggested is also a good place.
So,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so over at Keck, if you have ideas that you want to test out in terms of usefulness to our clinicians, I realize it's difficult to get to a clinician, but I'm in the hospital, well, it seems like all the time right now. But I'd be happy to try to facilitate to find out which clinicians and which members of Keck need to evaluate the design before it'll be put into place. That's what we did with the mask. That's what we're doing. We're working in very close tandem for the face shields. And so as a conduit into the hospital, I'll be happy to liaise basically anybody that wants to or needs to design things and needs to see if it's useful clinically.
And then I didn't know, so the image that was shown of the face shield on the actual motorized helmet itself. So there's at least, they're saying minimum 10 weeks lead time just to even get more of the helmets themselves. Now, we don't, in general, need a lot of them. Even just one makes a huge difference. So that model is actually the newer model. We have an older model, which, hold on, I'm just going to roll them back and I'll show you. So this is what the old model looked like. You can see it's kind of like a bike helmet. And so what they've done is they basically took this off and this under plastic right here and opened it up so you could have a framework and then the filter would integrate there. And I didn't know, we have 8 of these, and I didn't know if there would be any interest or how challenging it would be to basically make a conversion kit so that we could take these 8, which they now don't make the consumables for them anymore, so these are just dead in the water, and actually make them usable for the new capper series, which the face shields are being made for.
That shouldn't be too terribly difficult if we have some Lexan to extend some of the areas where the mounting needs to mount up. And then it just looks like it's all grommeted in. So we have a costuming department that could probably knock those out pretty easily. If you're just talking like 8 or 9 of them, I don't think it'll be.
I'm not even talking, yeah, even more would be awesome, but.
The bigger question is do you have the filters?
They are coming, they're supposed to be here within 3 weeks. So we had placed that order previously. And so once the filters come in, then we'd be able to integrate them into the system.
All right. So all you need is the
conversion.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's exactly what we did with Tucker on the disposable face shield one. Yeah, we could if you bring that over to me today. I'm meeting with Tucker today, I believe. Right, you're coming over, and we'll take a quick look. I might even just give you that unit if you want to take a look and see if there's a way to adapt it.
Yeah, so we have a broken one that we can't use, so I can just turn over a unit, and he's obviously seen the newer unit, and if you can figure out a conversion kit, because for whatever reason, the manufacturer just never made a conversion kit. So they just wanted everybody to just go straight over to the 710 series.
Oh, I know why they didn't make a conversion kit, because they forced you to buy the new series.
Well, yes, exactly. I could see how in a time like this that would be helpful if it's
I think that's a very doable thing. Tucker, would you like to respond on that?
Yeah.
Sure, I'm happy to take a look at it.
Cool. Andrea, do you want to get you?
Yeah, I was going to say, is there anything else? I mean, if there isn't anything else, I think everybody almost has like marching orders. There's a sign-up sheet. If you have 3D printers available, sign up at the sign-up sheet in the chat group. If you have friends, get them too.
I was wondering for these sign-up sheets, like for the sewing groups and like booties, masks, all these things that are happening. Is there like a central resource that people can go to, like that can sign up? Like I honestly, I hear this and I don't know, because I know the research community doesn't really hear a lot of what happens in the hospital.
Yeah. So the sign-up sheet that I posted, so I posted one at like 11:32 in the chat group, and that one's just a Google document. You put in like your name, email address, and then you're sent designs and you print them. And then there's also like delivery points at different hospitals. And I believe, and Daryl could correct me if I'm wrong, I think you can even specify what you're able to do. Right, so this is also a big problem right now is some people are able to provide the apron or the shield part, and some people are able to provide the headband part. And so if you're able to provide one or the other, right, they're both needed. And so that's part of the reason of having a sign-up sheet is we can mate people. right? Like, and bring all the pieces together.
The majority of people that are 3D printing will just be doing the headbands. We have people with the laser cutters that are doing the shields right now, and we're trying to coordinate that. So if you have a laser cutter and you have material, please notify us so we can figure that out. Like I said, I'm trying to centralize all the different designs that we are promoting into one downloadable website area, so that any updates will be sent directly there. And you know, we're dealing with concerns about materials and fitting the most amount of whatever product we're trying to do on whatever production line that we have. So some changes might have to occur. For example, we might have to shorten things a little bit just to be able to get the most out of the material that you have. And we'll be happy to work with people on that.
Yeah, so I would say one thing about material selection. So for example, for the headband, the material selection isn't as critical as for the face shield. So for the headband, you know, using like PLA versus PETG, like really either material is fine. For the face shield, you really need to use PETG in order for it to be reusable, because you need to be able to clean it with like an EPA hydrogen peroxide cleaner. And if you try to clean something like PLA with a hydrogen peroxide cleaner, it's going to become cloudy, and then you can't see through it. Whereas if you have your headband and your headband becomes cloudy, it doesn't really matter because you aren't trying to see through it.
So the other thing that we're trying to make a distinguishing part is what can be reused and what is a single use kind of situation. So we're not trying to dissuade you from in terms of the face shields to basically any clear plastic that isn't porous is usable for a face shield. The question is, can we reuse it? And if we can't, we can just detach it from the band if it becomes cloudy and toss it. In fact, right now we believe that after repeat cleanings, there might be issues with scratches and cloudiness. And so we've heard from New York and their orders that people are trying to put out is a 5-to-1 ratio of shields to headbands. I think we don't need to go that extreme. I think we were saying that maybe 4-to-1 would be perfectly fine. I'm actually happy with 1-to-1 right now, because we can always ramp up getting more of these stamped out if the quantities are in the large numbers. In fact, Sean's been working, Professor Lay's been working with a company that's located in LA that can actually rapidly stamp these out to our specifications out of PETG plastic. It just costs a fair amount of money. So we're trying to figure out the logistics of the cost situation. But if that gets going, we might be getting, we're talking about in a turnaround of like 2 or 3 days, get 5,000 at a time, and that in addition to what we have for the 3D printed parts, they just continually keep us supplied. Tucker, we talked about this before, but one of the nice things about coordinating this design is that we can convert these permanent face shield plastic into temporary face shield material also, just by simply resourcing or reapportioning what we attach to them. So we can attach the foam and rubber band design and start making disposable shields if we have a ton of shields and not enough headbands, and vice versa. We can start taking them, if we have a ton of headbands, we can just start using just non-replaceable. So like in the end, that's why we're trying to get for interoperability, so that we have options depending on what the bottleneck in our supply stream is locally.
So are there any remaining questions or to-do list items?
So I just wanted to mention that as Kim had on her sheet, if you have new novel things that you need to test, for example, ventilators that people are doing, or other devices, like there's been several models of pappers, of do-it-yourself pappers and you have something like that prototype and want to go into production, before you do that, please contact, let's see, it's under, it's Graciela, Graciela, the email that was put on her slide. If you have extra supplies that are already certified to donate, please go directly to donate protective gear at med.usc.edu, and they can start sourcing that and checking that stuff. But anything new and novel, we're going to want to test before we deploy, and I can help get that as soon as we triage what's coming in.
Yep. Seth, do you have a question?
Yeah, it's had sort of a general question. We're doing non-3D printed face shields, and our production rate is dependent on how many shifts we run and how much of our equipment we dedicate to that project. And so to justify adding more resources onto the project, I need to discuss it with the shop committee. I was wondering, is there some formal statement or some codified document saying what KEX needs are that I can bring up when having these discussions? So far, I've just been using, it was an email that came from one of the doctors a couple of weeks ago.
There isn't, but I can make that happen.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be really easy. On that note, can you send me an email so that I have your email?
Sure.
Christopher?
Yes, hi, this is Christopher Hoffman with the Mayor's Office. I just wanted to follow on Daryl's point and ask about the earlier conversation about swabs, nasal swabs, and what you see as the prospects for that, the need for that as an object that might be 3D printed. And I didn't follow the details about whether that's just the rod, that's the swab, whether it's all the entire swab, the entire object that can be 3D printed. Thanks.
So I actually, so that's a huge need. When I was validating the UVC system 2 weeks ago, it was brought up to me by Rosemary she's the director of the microbiology lab, and she actually does all the cultures and all the diagnostics for the hospital. So she oversees that. And when I asked her what their primary concern was at this point, she said it was swab shortage. She said, they have people working on PPE. PPE is a known problem. So it like PPE is still a concern, but at least the community acknowledges it's a concern. But right now, if they aren't able to test people, then how do they know who has it or not? And if you don't know who has COVID, then how do you know how to treat them? So that was what her main concern was, and that was a week ago. So I would say that is a huge concern, and she needs the entire system. So both the tip of it, the rod, the whole package.
I took a quick look at Orm Labs and what they posted on their site, and looked at what they're doing in terms of printing, and it looks like they're just doing it out of their resin printers. I'm assuming the detail on the resin printers that they're using is high enough where they can generate both the bristles and the shaft out of the correct material. I need to go and do a little bit more research and find out if they're releasing a model for print. I know so one of the things that, if this is going into the human body and fairly deep into the human body, and I don't know what the legal liabilities are in that sense, and what we have to do to be certified, because essentially from what I've read, they've set up an entire facility that's been blessed by the FDA, and their processes are, they're strictly controlling their processes. I don't have a doubt that we could do similar processes, but I don't know if we would be approved to do any kind of printing that would go so invasively in the human body from our, from a regulatory standpoint. So I'll do a little bit more research on that and reach out to Form Labs and see if they have any resources that can guide us on what they did to get that information.
Yeah,
Thank you.
if I can
That's
chime
helpful.
in. Oh, I'm sorry. If I can chime in here for a minute there, Christopher, a resource we might want to look at for these particular pieces. I don't know if 3D printing or laser sonography is a good way to go for the reasons that Daryl just pointed out, and also the limitations on the resin material itself. But in Los Angeles, there is a division of a company called Precision Brush. And I know that they're closed right now, but they do this and they manufacture it here in LA and in Ohio. If the mayor's office can reach out to them, they do a lot of industrial and a lot of things with the petroleum industry, but they also do a lot of things for the makeup and cosmetic industry. So they might not be aware that this is a need. And I think they could produce this kind of thing very quickly and very cheaply.
Got it. Did you say Precision Brush is the name of the company?
That's right. And their home office is in Ohio. And if they're not activated to this, they have the ability to do nylons and urethane brushes and things like this.
Okay, great. We will make a point of reaching out to them. Thank you.
No problem.
I would say one thing, if and when you reach out to them, when I was talking with Neha, so there's the first step is actually making them. The second step is they need to be sterilized, and the sterilization process is obviously pretty straightforward. But the fact they need to be sterilized is just something to be aware of. But that's obviously something that could actually be done on site at the hospital immediately before use, which would also greatly simplify the manufacturing process, because then they wouldn't need to be manufactured in a sterile environment. They could be sterilized before use, which would simplify.
Great, good point. Thank you.
I just had a question. Are you guys doing DNA extraction from these samples? And if so, are you guys seeing a shortage in those kits that the FDA or that the CDC has approved appropriate?
So the last I heard is that it was the sample acquisition that at least at USC they were worried about. That was their, but I have a feeling it's going to oscillate until they get the antibody tests.
Sure. Yeah, because I'm just thinking again, if at some point the actual DNA extraction itself becomes an issue, you could reach out to researchers to, if possible, make those kits.
Yeah. Seth, did you have another question? Or did I forget to put your hand down?
I didn't have another question.
Okay. Okay. In that case, thank you everybody for coming. And my dogs have now woken up. Great. Okay. And I think there's nothing else. I think this is the end of the day. So everyone have a good lunch or afternoon coffee or whatever you're doing next.
Jumping on phones. Thank you, Andrea, for
Okay.
hosting this. And
Yep.
see you guys later.
Yep.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everyone.